Perry Minasian spoke about our favorite team at the winter meetings on Monday and shared one update that just doesn't make sense, but we expected it.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And the #1 sports podcast network in all the land. Now, Perry spoke at the winter meetings about the roster, the starting staff. He also talked about the bullpen. He spoke about the additions of Grayson Rodriguez and Alek Manoah, and he shared what their role will be. That was interesting. And we're sharing why the Angels should be kind of unconcerned about losing a second-round pick and just sign a quality free agent. We'll talk about that in our third segment. Before we get there, we want to thank our sponsor, FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of all of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
Hey, we're talking Angels baseball with you Monday through Friday, especially this week because it's such an important week of the offseason. It's the winter meeting, so make sure you're and subscribed to YouTube on Locked On Angels YouTube channel. Make sure wherever you listen to podcasts, you're subscribed there as well. Mike and I are lifelong fans of this team, talking baseball, Angels baseball specifically, with you. We're sickos because we love this team so much, even though they treat us oh so bad sometimes, Mike. But, you know, with the winter meetings comes some hopium. But we did hear from Perry Minasian, thanks to Jeff Fletcher of the Orange County Register, and then, of course, Rhett Bollinger, who covers the Angels for MLB.com. Let's get into some of the updates that they shared yesterday, Monday, at the winter meetings.
Yeah, two guys that you can trust, by the way. They're going to get it right, and they're going to make sure they have all their facts together before they hit post or send, or unlike Bob Nightingale, right? So follow those guys. They're fantastic. Now, they talked about a few things that Perry Minasian talked about on Monday. They started with a conversation with Perry, and he shared about what is going to happen with the starting staff. Now, Perry said, I'd like to add more, and we'd like to continue. Those ambiguous statements are Perryisms. He constantly has those ambiguous statements. Of course, you need to add more, or you would like to add more, and you want to continue.
GMPMs, GMpisms? That sounds like a disease.
Perrypisms. He did add that the average big league team used more than 13 starters last season. I wonder where he heard that from. I think maybe that was on Locked On Angels. So there's no reason. There's no reason to stop with the two that they've added this winter. And he did talk about Grayson Rodriguez and Alek Manoah. He said, Johnny, they are gambles. And that was interesting to get unfiltered, kind of honest Perry Minasian in talking about these two signings.
Yeah, the biggest thing about these two is that they haven't pitched in the majors since 2024. Rodriguez was injured last season. Manoah did pitch in the minor leagues last season, making his way back from Tommy John surgery. Perry said there's an element of risk, but we understand that. Mike, he spoke about Alek Manoah, and I think he assuaged our fears about just slotting him right into the rotation. He said, we felt that Manoah was worth the gamble, knowing where he is. And what he's doing. We have a plan. We've got his delivery back in place. It's changed over the last year and a half. He's in a healthy, way more beneficial place when it comes to health. He had more than just arm stuff in Toronto, and we've got a good handle on that. And he's motivated. And even though he has options, Perry said he's expecting Manoah to be on the team as a reliever if he doesn't crack the rotation. Speaking about Manoah, Perry said he's going to have to go out and earn it. If he's the Alek Manoah we've seen in the past, then I'd imagine he'd be in the rotation. With that being said, we're definitely looking for ways to improve the rotation. So how do you take that statement of he's got to earn it and improving the rotation, Mike?
Well, I think from Perry's perspective, I think that they're going to start with improving the rotation by fixing what happened with Manoah when he fell off a cliff. And it sounds like it was really his windup, his delivery. And the fact that he couldn't hit the strike zone and was hitting people in the face tells you that his his arm slot was not the same, that his release point was not the same, that his extension was not good. All of that is a problem. And getting him with Mike Maddox could potentially solve that problem. Jon, in the minor leagues, though, when he came back from his injury, he wasn't bad.
No.
And before he got hurt, he wasn't bad. So there might not be too much that needs to be fixed with Alek Manoah, but getting him around Mike Maddox, potentially that could solve the problem. I think that that's part of what he means by improving the rotation. Immediately when I read that at first, I thought, of course, he's going to get more arms, but I think he's also thinking in small terms, small bites. Like if we can get this guy to be a really good starter or be the guy that he once was, that immediately improves the starting rotation.
It makes me happy to know that it's not just a guaranteed, like, yep, he's our fifth starter. That's it. And that was my biggest concern when this news came out last week. And so to hear that he's going to have to, if he fights his way into the rotation, that's one thing. And you really have to prove a lot to make it into the rotation. But it's kind of like what we talked about, long relief, let the guy work his way back as he builds up strength, as he works his way back to being a starter, essentially. And I still think there's a chance where he's going to be that sixth guy. He's going to be that piggyback guy, especially if Grayson Rodriguez, uses up all of his innings in 2026. So going to be very interesting to watch as this unfolds. But, a lot of the rumors that we talked about yesterday, the fact that Perry Minasian is still looking to improve the rotation, I think that speaks very well to where they're headed, especially during the winter meetings and shortly thereafter as well.
Perry also spoke about the bullpen, and this was frustrating, but not unexpected. He said that they are undecided if they're going to go after an established closer like Kenley Jansen. He didn't mention Kenley Jansen, but when you hear established closer and they got Kenley Jansen last year, that's immediately who comes to mind. Now, Jeff Fletcher reported that based on discussions with Perry Minasian, what he heard from Perry, the Angels could either use Robert Stephenson or Ben Joyce in the closer role. Just a reminder, they're both coming off significant injuries.
Yeah. All the innings those two have piled up over the last 2 years.
Robert Stephenson has 10 in the last 2 years, right? Yeah. Ben Joyce didn't pitch at all last year. And then there's also conversations about looking to acquire a reliever that hasn't been a closer and put him in that role, similar to what they did with Carlos Estevez. This sounds like, Jon, that Kenley Jansen is out, that they're not going to move in that direction. And it feels kind of like a Perry Minasian era type of decision. They brought in Carlos Estevez, who wasn't really closing with the Rockies. They thought maybe they could figure some things out. He ends up being fantastic for the Angels, ends up being fantastic for the Royals, kind of struggled a little bit with the Phillies, but got to the playoffs. But this feels like Perry doing what Perry normally does, that he's just going to try to find the diamond in the rough and have the diamond in the rough be the one that perhaps could be the back of the bullpen guy and help this team potentially win.
I don't know if that's necessarily a Perry Minasian era thing, because we've had Raisel Iglesias, we got Carlos Estevez to make him a closer. So you're right there. That's kind of, hey, let's see what this guy can do out of Colorado and have him be our closer. And then you had Kenley Jansen. So Mike, he's kind of always had a closer. It surprises me, actually. And it really doesn't make sense to not have that back of the bullpen guy, especially when you have such unreliable arms in Stephenson and Ben Joyce. Don't get me wrong. I like them both. They just haven't been out there. And so the fact is that they didn't pitch hardly at all last year. So to me, I don't necessarily think that this feels like such a Perry move. It's just surprising because we've had closers during the Perry Minasian era.
Yeah, if you're focused on the closers, I guess it makes sense. Although he didn't get Raisel Iglesias, he traded him away. He did sign or trade for Carlos Estevez, and then he did sign Kenley Jansen.
Yeah.
But he traded a really good closer away and then got Carlos Estevez and turned him into a closer. Yeah. They got Kenley Jansen last year because they didn't really have anybody.
Right.
But overall, the entire roster, when Perry in the last 5 years has needed a guy to perform, it's always been, not always, most of the time it's been somebody that could they do it? Well, I guess we're going to find out, right? Alek Manoah, Grayson Rodriguez in the starting rotation is an example of that. Yoan Moncada at third base last year is an example of that. And so that's where I think the frustration comes from, but also it's not unexpected because Perry doesn't shop at the high bargain, or not high bargain, but the high end stores. He shops at the stores that have the knockoff cereal that mom used to buy when we were growing up, right? Instead of Fruit Loops, it was Fruitios, you know,
not Lucky Charms, Lucky Stars.
Yes, right. And that's what it feels like with this move. Now, can he find somebody, or could Ben Joyce do it, or could Robert Stephenson do it? Sure, you paid Robert Stephenson some money. I get that. Could Ben Joyce do it? Sure, you're going to give him an opportunity. I guess it just feels like if you're going to be that competitive team and you're only going to operate in this 1 year window, man, you're going to run with those guys. Okay. And that might be a part of me as an Angel fan going, maybe this is part of the rebuild. Maybe this is why they don't go and hand out massive contracts and develop some players. But this feels more like a rebuild than it feels like we're going to go and try to run down the West. You can put that in the bank and cash it and, you know, all of those things. And we're going to be competitive and all of those things. This feels more like, why not run with some of your younger guys to see what they can do?
You know, and that's something that we've wanted to see for a very long time, is just let the young guys go out there and play. Here's what I think the reality of the situation is. And I'll say this, like Jeff Fletcher, you know, said, based on his discussion with Perry, it could be Robert Stephenson, Ben Joyce. Mike, you just saw, you know, what Devin Williams got. You just saw what Ryan Helsley got. So, and they also didn't sign Kenley until February, right? Yeah. And so I kind of wonder if there's just there's a wait and see game here, right? Where, hey, if we don't get a closer, we've got Ben Joyce and Robert Stephenson. We'll be fine. So I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of hopium on my part, but I also think maybe it's a little bit of a deflection on Perry's part to wait out the market. Don't let Scott Boras use you as bait for, you know, the Angels are real interested in Peter Fairbanks. You know, I don't know if he's a Boras client, but you know what I'm saying.
Sure.
And I say that because this is what happens all the time with the Angels, right? They're always the bait. They're always the being dangled out there as, well, I hear the Angels are real interested in Pete Alonso, right? And it's like, yeah, right. Yeah. And so I kind of wonder, let's let the reliever market cool down a little bit. I mean, Raisel Iglesias gets, you know, probably more money than he deserved for the 1 year to return to the Braves too.
Yeah. I guess I'm tired of reading between the lines, I guess. I mean, you know what I mean?
I
like
hear you.
You see some of the teams that are going out there and they're like, hey, we're getting this guy, we're getting that guy. And being an Angel fan for the last 11 years, we've had to read between the lines, and it's been this bait and switch. And it's been this, we're, you know, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. And I understand that that's part of leadership. I understand that that's part of the baseball world, the baseball dynamic, but there is, I guess I'm spoiled by like a John Lynch for the 49ers. We're Niner fans, right? And John Lynch is like, nah, here's what's happening, right? And I love that about John Lynch. Is that helpful for his team? Well, they don't suck, but I don't know how helpful it is in the getting players and signing players, but it is an attractive place to come. It feels like we just got to constantly like, okay, what do you think he said? And what you said, you're probably right. You're probably exactly right. Yeah. That's just, I'm tired of using that brain muscle, man. I really am.
Well, we'd be out of a job if we didn't have to use that brain muscle, right? Am I right? Yeah, that's what we're here to do, is talk about and decode the Angels and Perry Minasian.
Absolutely. But I think I'm just speaking on behalf of all everydayers, right, man. It's like I'm tired of taking that muscle to the gym. It's built. It's good. All right, we're done. Can you just speak to us like grown-ups, please?
Exactly. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, we've got an update on Anthony Rendon. The coaching staff is complete, and would you sign somebody with a qualifying offer attached to them at the expense of a second-round draft pick? We're going to get into all of those conversations and so much more coming right up.
NFL Sundays move very fast. One play, and suddenly everything feels so much different. Like last night's game, John.
Oh, man.
That was Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts
threw a pick, and then there was a fumble, and then he fumbled it. Is that what happened?
Yeah, he threw a pick, got the fumble, and then dropped it and fumbled himself. So if you're betting on Jalen Hurts You might be a little bit hurt if you were FanDueling with Jalen Hurts last night for sure.
Yeah, I wonder what the money line was on that. Can I do a same game parlay on a Jalen Hurts
on a turnover
and
a turnover in the same play?
And he recovers the turnover. Wild. FanDuel lets you jump in on everything. That's what's great about this app. So if you want to be right in the middle of all of the NFL action this season, go to FanDuel.com. You can place your NFL bets live all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network out there. And we thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Listen, I am so excited because yesterday we launched the Locked On Angels Everydayer Club. Now there's a $5 tier where you can get ad-free audio feeds of Locked On Angels. So commercial-free, no interruptions. You can also jump on the Discord server at $5, which lets you chat with us on Discord, but you can also jump into other teams' Discords as well. You get exclusive access to bonus shows, a members-only Locked On merch store, and if you want to have Everydayer Club for any other shows, a 60% discount. And then if you want to take it to the next level, you guys are everydayers, you're already tuned in and tuned on to Locked On Angels. You get everything in the all-access tier from the $5 tier, plus additional all-access episodes of Locked On Angels, one-on-one texting. I've been texting with some of our everydayers, and it's been super fun. We're just chatting back and forth. We give you newsletter versions of each show and a 15% discount on all orders on the members-only Locked On merch store. So be sure you head on over to lockedonangels.supercast.com or check out the link in the episode description. Again, $5 commercial-free and some other perks, and then $15 a month. You can get all access, additional content, and texting one-on-one with me, which has been a whole lot of fun so far.
Last week, we got a report that the Angels were negotiating.
We're negotiating. You negotiated for less money.
I want Ted Danson money and the Ted Danson plane. They're negotiating some sort of arrangement that would end Anthony Rendon's time in an Angels uniform. Thank the good Lord. But Perry was asked about that yesterday. He said, there's nothing to talk about in regard with that report. He said that Rendon is rehabbing, and then his words were, so we'll see how that goes. You could just hear the disdain, the frustration.
Talk about reading between the lines, like you were talking about last segment. Yeah.
I'm going to read between the lines, and it's exactly what you think it is. It's a big giant from Perry Minasian when it comes to Rendon. So he's rehabbing. That's the word. Now, reminder, Rendon is set to be paid $38 million in 2026. The MLB Players Association does not allow the total remaining present day value to be reduced. So any sort of restructuring that would spread out that money would have to be incentivized for Rendon.
It would include interest and stuff like that. So it's an investment opportunity.
The average annual value used against the luxury tax calculation, that will not change. Now, if he retires, then there might be some conversation that could pivot there. Now, Jeff Fletcher also reported that it's still possible that nothing happens. And because the parties are just kind of far apart, and there's a lot of people involved, and the MLB's involved, the union's involved. And then there was another report that they haven't even really started having those conversations as of yet. So, John, it sounds as if this restructuring, based off of what Perry said yesterday, it sounds like no matter what happens, that it really is not going to have an impact on how the Angels approach the offseason or the money that they spend. Am I reading between the lines there, John? Am I right there?
I mean, it's certainly going to have an impact in terms of how much is available to spend. And like I said, if he retires, they're not going to have that luxury tax hit in the same way that they would this year. Mike, if nothing happens, just fine. Pay him the 1 year, get it over with, and work on stuff after the lockout, go to 2027. You know what I'm saying? Because
did you see one of our everydayers said, put him in AA. Make him go to AA and ride the bus, and not the Jordan bus when Michael Jordan played baseball, but like give him a bike. You have to bike there, and you got to buy your own Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing about his service time is that he has to accept an assignment like that. So he certainly wouldn't do that.
I wonder why they just don't outright release him.
I mean, it could come down to that, right?
Yeah.
Just to get him off the roster,
Yeah.
and not have him around the players. I mean, that's really what it could come down to if they can't renegotiate this whole thing. But again, I think the biggest thing here is banking on him retiring. I think that would be the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because again,
please.
yeah, no kidding. Because again, I think that the luxury tax hit that they take, the $35 million, which is the annual average value, that would come off the books because he's no longer an active player. Now, if he does stay on and they, pay him out this year and then spread out that money, that wouldn't change. And so I think that's the clarity I want to bring to the conversation. But if nothing gets done here, then just get it over with. It's one more year. It's one more season. This is the commitment that Artie Moreno and Billy Epler made. So just get it done. Again, there's no world where he doesn't get the money that he's owed because it's a guaranteed contract. But like we spoke about last week, the hope is that you could free up some dollars to do a little bit of spending, to go out there and do something. Will it change what the Angels do? I mean, that's TBD, because I'm sure they went into this offseason not even, expecting Rendon to be there, which was clear when they said, yeah, we're going to look, for a third baseman and all this stuff. So, but in terms of dollars and cents, will it change what they do? I mean, it could. And if they're not able to free up some cash and some cash flow and also that luxury tax hit, really, I think it banks on him retiring. That's the most important thing to this Angel fan, is that he retires and gets that, and they're able to get that money off the luxury tax hit that they're taking right now.
John, we also got word that the coaching staff is completed. They have a full coaching staff. They hired Daryl Scott as an assistant pitching coach, Dom Chidi as the bullpen coach, so he's back, and Derek Florco as the third hitting coach. This team needs 3 hitting coaches.
You're telling me.
Amen. Right? Now, Chidi and Florco were already in the Angels organization. They were in the minors. Chidi was the Angels' major league bullpen coach in 2021. Florco's been with the Angels since 2018. Now, here's the staff completed with those names and these guys. Bench coach John Gibbons, pitching coach Mike Maddox, hitting coach Brady Anderson, assistant hitting coach John Mabry, third base coach Keith Johnson, Keith Johnson, first base coach Adam Eaton, infield coach Andy Schlatzley. Did I say that right? Schatzley. I'll get it right one day. And then, of course, Max Stassi is going to be the catching coach. Perry talked about Brady Anderson yesterday, John. He addressed that hire specifically with reporters.
He did. He said, Anderson has worked with players individually. He said, I've always had a ton of respect for him and his baseball acumen and just the kind of person that he is. And when he talked to players that were with him in Baltimore, what he did for that group, you talked to the manager, you talked to the coaches, you talked to the people that were around him. He was very impactful with them, becoming as good as they were in that run, and someone we feel like is going to do an excellent job for us. Also want to mention that Kurt Suzuki was on MLB Network talking about how excited he is to work with Logan O'Hoppe. And of course, they were teammates at the end of 2022. I know Max Stassi is really excited to work with Logan O'Hoppe as well. We've talked about how they need to keep it simple, and maybe 3 hitting coaches isn't keeping it simple, but at least behind the dish, I think there's a lot of wisdom between Kurt Suzuki and Max Stassi for Logan O'Hoppe.
But Brady Anderson does work with each hitter in a one-on-one relationship. That was the implication that was shared yesterday from Perry specifically. And that might be why they have 3 guys, because Brady's going to do the 80,000 foot. Here's what this guy needs. Okay, John, I need you to work on this. And then I'm going to get the other guy to work on that. That's something that you and I have said needs to be the strategy with this team, instead of just trying to make it one size fits all. Every batter is the same batter. It's not. That's not who this team is. And if you can have that one-on-one time with 3 hitting coaches, then maybe a guy like Bryce Teodosio can thrive if he ends up being on this roster and in the starting lineup in center field, because defensively, fantastic. Offensively, a lot of room to grow. But if you're working with him one-on-one, then you're not making him Taylor Ward. You're making him the best version of Bryce Teodosio that he can be.
Yeah, I wonder what the best version of Bryce Teodosio looks like, excuse my language right there, the best version of Bryce Teodosio looks like. Because Mike, I was having a great conversation. I think it was Joseph on Twitter had brought up Bryce Teodosio, and we were kind of going talking back and forth about that. I look at his history, and he's had one great season in the minor leagues in AAA where he hit, I believe it was like 272 over a full season. But as we all know, that's Salt Lake. The numbers get inflated there. And then his college career and his other stops in the minor leagues, not a great hitter. Just not a great hitter at all. And I'm looking at video. I'm looking at StatCast and Baseball Savant. And I'm going, what's he doing? He's 6'3". The launch angle is about 12.5 degrees. He did have a max exit velo of like 110 last year, which is awesome. So he's capable of that. I was watching the one home run that he hit, and it was a 90-mile-an-hour fastball off Cole Reagan's, I believe. And it was, low and inside, and he just took that thing for a ride. And I'm just like studying as hard as I can. I'm going, where can they get this guy right? Again, 6'3". It feels like the launch angle isn't quite there. Like, when he gets hits, like they kind of fall in, and he's fast, so he can stretch things out.
Yeah.
And then I noticed walked at like a 3.3% clip and struck out at like 31%. And so I'm like, okay, well, you can start there.
Yeah.
You can start with a better eye at the plate and have him walk a little bit more, have him strike out a little bit less. So there's definitely steps for somebody like Bryce Teodosio to take with this new coaching staff. How do you feel about this new staff overall from what you've seen so far?
If it makes this team better, great. I like the names they have in there. I like that John Gibbons is there, because that helps Kurt Suzuki. I like that they're really prioritizing. It does maybe feel like a bit of overkill with 3 hitting coaches, but man, they need some help. And these guys are all kind of fresh to the job. Not John Mabry, he's done it before, but Brady Anderson, he's fresh to the job. So I guess if you're going to balance out the pitching coach, who's the best in the biz, and you're going to bring in, then you're not going to bring in the best hitting coach. You got to bring in 3 guys to maybe compensate for the fact that you have Mike Maddox working with your pitchers.
Yeah, they they got to make sure that, one Mike Maddox equals 3 hitting coaches on the other side. So yeah, I am appreciative of this coaching staff, and we'll see what happens, and we'll see who we're complaining about when it comes to next season.
With the World Cup coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, Game Time is helping you find tickets and giving the advantage back to you. With Game Time, you can track the price drops in real time. You can get alerts when seats open, and you can buy tickets the moment that they hit. The app puts the power back in your hands. Just pull up the app. The layout is so simple. You can just scroll through, see the matchups, compare seat views, compare cost, who's playing who, and then you can say yes. And then once you say yes, the price you see is the price you pay. There's no hidden fees with Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets. Every match or every concert or every event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, promo code LOCKEDONMLB, get $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. Game Time.
So we've been talking about some of the potential free agents the Angels could sign, but a lot of them have qualifying offers attached to them, Mike. Now, in case you didn't know, and just a refresher for anybody who's watching or listening, qualifying offer is given to a first-time free agent by the team that they played for. The player can take it as a one-year deal or reject it and sign elsewhere. And it's a standard issue contract, the same amount of money across the board for all players who have a qualifying offer offered to them. And the money, it changes from year to year. This year, I think it's $22.5 million. And so, for example, we talked about Zach Gallen. The Diamondbacks offered him a qualifying offer. It's his first year as a free agent. And if he had accepted it, he would have come back to the Diamondbacks for 1 year at $22.5 million. However, he turned it down. And because he turned that down, and if he eventually signs elsewhere, the team that free agent came from, in this case, the Diamondbacks, they would get a second-round pick as compensation. Remember, the Angels got a second-round pick as compensation for not getting Shohei Ohtani back in 2023 when he went to the Dodgers. Now, obviously, they offered him a qualifying offer. And of course, Ohtani wasn't going to take it. But what you do as a team and as a front office is you offer it so that if they reject it and sign elsewhere, you get that pick back. So a lot of people will offer it knowing they're not going to get the player. And then, of course, they can negotiate and do all that. So again, that's kind of the long and short of it. Now, a lot of fans don't want to miss out on a second-round pick, but we did a little bit of research, didn't we, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. What would you be losing out on if you decided to lose a second-round pick? You won't lose multiple picks. You'll just lose one, and then you can sign multiple guys that have qualifying offers, but only one of those picks will go away. Then the other team gets compensation picks. Now, our buddy Brian from Inside Halos recently posted this that caught my attention. Here's the Angels' last 10 second-round picks. Chase Shores, Chris Cortez, Ryan Johnson, which was the compensation pick for Shohei, Kai Bush, Kyron Paris, Jeremiah Jackson, Griffin Canning, Brandon Marsh, Jam Jones, and then Joe Gatto. Now, there's some familiar names on that list. Some have potential, and then some haven't really performed up to their potential. The question is, if we gave up a second-round pick, those would be some of the second-round picks that we would, quote-unquote, be given up. Would you want to give up those types of players, those hitters, and those pitchers, John?
Yeah, the concern is somebody like Brandon Marsh, right? At one point, he was the number one prospect in the Angel system, and we've been able to see what he's gone on to do. Somebody like Griffin Canning, of course. Kyron Paris is still a question mark. Chris Cortez is somebody that we're really excited about. In fact, There was a scout Jeff Fletcher talked to about the Angels organization and said he might be the best pitcher in the minor leagues, which is really exciting. So those are some of the names the Angels could miss out on. But then, Mike, I said, well, maybe the Angels just stink at drafting over the last, 10 years. And so I kind of wondered, what if it's other second round picks from other teams? Well, there's a good little list here. There's Connor Norby, who was drafted in the second round in 2021. Spencer Schwellenbach was a second rounder. Kyle Manzardo, who was drafted by the Rays. He's now on the Guardians. He hit 27 home runs as a first baseman last year. A little player named James Wood, who was drafted by the Padres and traded to the Nationals, and he's become a stud. Andrew Abbott, who was a stud starting pitcher for the Reds last year. Dalton Rushing, who was drafted by the Dodgers. Everybody said, oh, Dalton Rushing, the greatest prospect of all time. Well, that didn't really pan out so far. Chandler Simpson of the Rays was drafted in 2022 as a second rounder, and he was great this past year. Parker Messick of the Guardians, a great starting pitcher, got into a couple of starts this year. Mike, here's the two that really concern me as second rounders. Jacob Mizorowski, a.k.a. The Miz of the Brewers. I came to play, right? Who was a stud for the Brewers. Stud starting pitcher, got into pitching in the postseason. And then Roman Anthony of the Red Sox, who was in the top 100 and by some outlets ranked the number one prospect in all of baseball, taken in the second round of 2022. So the big question is, would you be willing to miss out on these types of players for a quality pitcher or a quality hitter? What's the give and take here, Mike?
Not if you're the Angels. If you're another team, absolutely. But not if you're the Angels, because the Angels are cheap and they run with minor league guys. We'll probably see Chase Shores pretty soon, if not this season, next season, right? We'll probably start to hear stories and rumblings of Chris Cortez. You don't make these moves and sign somebody who has a qualifying offer connected to them if you're the Angels. If you're another team, then do it, especially if you're being competitive, especially if you're trying to make the playoffs, because there are some really good guys out there that you could sign. There's always a risk, right? You sign a guy, is he going to be great? Or if you don't sign a guy and you draft a guy, is he going to turn out? The risk averse, like how much weight are you putting in the risk for whatever team you are? If you're the Angels, I think it's more risky to sign a guy than it is to draft a guy, because they draft guys that are almost immediately ready to play.
Yeah, and then you got to think about a situation like Brandon Marsh. Brandon Marsh in the Angel system is not as good as Brandon Marsh in the Philly system or the Phillies organization, right? They corrected hitting stuff. right out of the gate. Now, could that have been corrected with the Angels at some point? Possibly, but you also have to value, are these guys going to be as good as you thought in the environment that they came up in? So that's another consideration to make as well. Mike, if they go after a qualifying offer guy and it needs to be a starting pitcher and it needs to be for at least 4 to 5 years, they can't, dilly-dally around with a 3-year deal, a 2-year, or even a 1 year. So there's no reason to take a qualifying offer on a guy if you don't plan to have him for multiple years. Because again, this is where a lot of the Angels roster is coming from, these first and second round picks. And not saying they're going to lose a first round pick, but that's just a lot of the guys who are coming up to play for this team right now. And for the most part, it's been fairly successful. There's still some guys that need to develop and take their time. And I think the Angels are doing that. As much as it seems like they rush everybody up, well, they didn't rush up Chris Cortez and that sort of thing. So I think it's important to remember that if they sign a qualifying offer, you got to make it worth it. You can't miss out on that second round pick if it's not going to be for multiple years and a guy who's going to impact you now and for the future.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Angels with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and so much more. You can do that for $5 or $50 a year, $5 a month, $50 a year, or you can go all access, get one-on-one text access with my brother Jon, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and 15% discount on the Locked On merch store. Go to lockedonangels.supercast.com or click the link in the episode description.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels, at Super Halo Bros on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We'll keep up with everything going down at the winter meetings regarding the Angels. Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Yeah, we got all the breaking news. Plus, we've got that conversation that Kurt Suzuki had with the MLB Network. He did say something pretty interesting about Logan O'Hoppe that you didn't mention that we're going to mention tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
See what I did there? I teased it out. I held it back just to have all the important stuff. All right, friends, we hope you'll come back and join us for that. Until then, my name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
All right, all you sickos who love the Angels like we do, and for all the everydayers who love to watch and listen, we will see you back here on Wednesday.
You used a big word in the first segment, and I was going to ask you to tell me what it was, but I forgot what the word is because it was too big for me.
Was it breast when I tried to say Bryce